This session is mainly going to be talking about how to optimize use with the surface guided system. So we're going to do a lot of hands-on. We have a live model here with us, and it's going to be really exciting to get going with that. So I'm going to grab my little clicker here. I just want to first introduce myself. My name is Adam Gorder. I'm one of the clinical application support specialists with Vision RT. Okay, I'm based in the U.S. Western region, and I train the Align RT product. And this is my colleague, Sarah. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Sarah Repicano, and I'm a clinical application specialist, and I work for Varian, and I train OSMS, so the Optical Surface Monitoring System.
Okay, perfect. So if you hear us, we're going to try and refer to it as our surface guided system. Okay, basically it's the same product, it's just branded differently. So if you hear OSMS or Align RT, same product as we go throughout this this presentation. Okay, so before we get too in depth here with our session today, I just want to give a brief overview of the surface guided system and what it is. So there's two major modes that we're concerned with in Align RT and OSMS. The first one is record mode. The second one is treatment mode. Record mode is basically the treatment planning process for Align RT, getting all of the patient information in so that we can use the system. Treatment mode is what our therapists are going to be using on a daily basis while they treat the patient. Okay, so this is what your record mode screen looks like, as many of you are very well aware. We have our 3D representation here, a 3D photo that is an optional feature with the system. He is actually in an SRS mask, and it's great for drawing those regions of interest. A great feature to have. Over here in the left-hand corner, this white box, we have our patient tree. Okay, so this is the information we're going to have. We have our patient's name, ID number, and then we have what we're treating, the site, and then we have the patient ISO center underneath that. Okay, underneath those numbers, we have our ISO center field, which is what it houses all of our reference surfaces. Now, I just want to mention briefly, the reference surfaces that you see here, you'll notice say VRT as their header. There's two different headers that we will see within this product. The first one is DICOM, the second one is VRT. VRT signifies we took a reference capture using the Vision RT cameras, and then DICOM signifies it came from your CT sim. Okay, so as we go throughout this presentation, you're going to notice that the references do say VRT because we did not scan our model, Tim, and I do want to introduce him. This is Tim, our live model. He gives a little wave, everyone. Got a shout out there, Tim, this one. Man, this group's fun. Okay. All right, so now that we have our patient tree complete, the next step here is to draw our region of interest. And drawing a region of interest is very important with the surface guided system, okay? All of our delta values are going to be derived from this region of interest, so we need to make sure that it's done correctly. So I'm going to turn the time over to Sarah to explain how to do this process.
Yeah, so we have some guidelines of how to draw your ROI and some tips and tricks of what to include, what not to include. So for creating an ROI, you want to make sure that you draw the ROI to include the patient ISO center and also the surrounding areas right around your treatment area. Next, you want to make sure your ROI extends laterally to your patient midline or mid-depth, and that's just to help your continuous delta values when they're being monitored. So what we'll see is that when the gantry is going around the patient and blocking one of the OSMS cameras, you still have enough information on your patient and laterally that your deltas would be one continuous monitoring session. Next, you want to include a stable surface of your patient and include some topography. So for a good ROI, for it to match properly, you want to include some good topography or somewhere to anchor your ROI at. So some examples would be to include the patient rib cage, maybe to include some clavicles. Those are good things to add in your ROI. And also you want to include the patient's skin surface only. So you don't want to include anything that's not part of the patient. So don't draw your ROI if you notice it's falling on a mobilization device. If it's an area that you're always covering the patient with a gown or a sheet, you don't want to include that, so only on your patient. And lastly, you want to make sure your ROI size is appropriate. So if I draw an ROI that is too large for where I should be treating, I will notice that my frame rate will be very low. So if you see any frame rates that are 1 or below, it's a good indicator that maybe your ROI is inappropriate for the treatment site. And we'll show you later in treatment mode where to find the frame rate And so we'll show you where you can take a look at that. That would be your first place to go to. Check your ROI if you have a low frame rate.
Okay, great. And with that, we have passed out a few ROI flipbooks. These rules are all included in that flipbook. We're going to refer to this again in just a few minutes. But just so you're aware, those rules are included in that. Okay, so once our region of interest is drawn correctly in record mode, the next step is to use the system to treat our patient. So there's 5 simple steps that we're going to use to treat our patient. We have this acronym TREAT, T-R-E-A-T. The first step is to align your patient to the treatment isocenter. T stands for the treatment isocenter. So you're going to line up your patient to their marks or tattoos or tattoo-less, however your clinic is set up at this point in time. After you have set up to the general location of your isocenter, you are going to run monitoring. Okay, you're going to turn on your surface-guided system to begin monitoring your patient. It's going to give you a set of delta values, and you're going to fine-tune those delta values. You want them to be as close to 0 as possible, starting first with your rotationals and then moving on to your translational shifts. Once all of those deltas have been fine-tuned to be as close to 0 as we can be, we're going to move on to E, which is everyday imaging, stepping outside to take imaging if needed, based on our protocols in our clinics. After that, the letter A is going to stand for always monitoring our patients. So we're going to continue to monitor our patient for intrafraction motion management throughout the entire patient treatment. Okay? After we have delivered our entire prescribed dose, we are going to terminate the patient session, and then we will pause and exit. So these 5 simple steps are the same steps for every workflow, whether it be an extremity, an SBRT, SRS, abdomen, whatever it is you're treating, same steps for each one of those sites. Okay? So we are going to try and refer back to these 5 steps as we go along. So take a mental note right now of what all of those mean, because we will try and bring it up here in the future. So there's a few treatment workflows that we're going to go over today, and let's talk about those.
Yep, so we'll be going over an SBRT workflow, chest wall with bolus, the deep inspiration breath hold along with the real-time coach, and also we'll be doing an extremity. Okay, so starting off with SBRT. So Tim, if you can bring your arms up. Thanks. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so going with our acronym TREAT. So the first thing we want to do is we want to line our patient up to the treatment isocenter, whether that be tattoos or if you're in a tattoo-less environment.
Fix that region of interest really quick, just following my region of interest rules. Just make sure that everything looks okay.
Okay, so next we want to start our monitoring. So we'll run our monitoring session, and then we want to align our patient until our deltas are close to 0. So if I did need to manipulate my patient, I would start with my rotations first. So I would get the rotation, the roll, and the pitch on as close to 0 as possible, and then I would do my translation, so the vert, lunge, and lat. Okay, so since we're in position here, now we're going to step outside the room and we're going to take our images. So up to your clinic protocol, if you're imaging every day, you'll go out and take your images. And then let's say from our image, now we have a shift that's from what OSMS is telling us. We have a shift there that we see in our films. So once we shift the patient, what we're going to do is we're going to take a new reference capture of the patient. And what that will do is we'll update your patient position on the right side of the screen here. So it'll be the new position on the treatment table, including the shifts that you made from imaging. Okay, so now that our deltas are zeroed out from that reference, we would go ahead and treat our patient. And if you have the beam hold capability, if the patient moves outside the thresholds, the beam will be held. And then once our treatment is finished, we're just going to terminate the session. So we're going to pause the monitoring and then close out of treatment mode. Okay, so any questions on the SBRT workflow?
As far as your screen, do you have any, when you're setting up the patient and you turn on your lights, do you have any shortcuts or always true with pitch, up or down, roll, whatever side it's on, or rotation? Which way
It should,
always
it's always the same. And yes, and your directions are based on your IEC scale. So whatever scale that you have, your positions.
So if your roll is on the right of that screen, you would roll on that patient's side. That's what
I see, yeah.
Shortcuts for the lateral setting and
Which way to go?
when you see, do you have paperwork that
It's fine,
No,
we're talking
yeah,
about
so
that.
with that, so yeah, we were just talking about that. So as far as the configuration settings go, it's going to be different for each system, right? So that's something, once you install the system and ready to accept and get going, you can just troubleshoot, right? To see which way is negative, which way is positive, and then it will always be that way for your system. It won't change. So right now there's no like quick tips or
No,
anything.
like set documentation.
It's different, yeah.
But yeah, so what he's saying, like on site, I'll go in, we'll put a phantom on, and then we'll move it, like vert launch, and see which way it goes, and just document it.
Yeah,
So then
just
everyone
make
has a
a
quick
quick
cheat sheet of
cheat
which way to
sheet.
go. Yeah.
make your own?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the process of that. Creating some, actually. Yes.
You don't have it.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct. Okay.
Any other questions on SBRT? No? Okay, you guys are making it easy on us. Okay, let's move on. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, so the gated capture you'd want to use if your ROI was anywhere where there's breathing. So lung, abdomen, you would want to use your gated capture. So the difference is if I just took a normal reference, I could capture that reference maybe at that patient's max inhale or max exhale. And if you do that and start monitoring, you'll see the deltas only moving on one side of the zero. So if I want to have an average of the patient breathing, I would do the gated capture. So that would be, yep. So there's a gated capture checkbox, and you would select reference. And when you do that, the system will acquire, you can see in the lower left corner, 30 reference images right at the level of the isocenter. So then when your trace comes at the bottom, I'll see 30 images, and these are all references in one breathing cycle. Okay, so we're moving the trace down because his isocenter, it's a little superior, so there's not a lot of breathing motion there. So he just reselected the trace to be closer to the diaphragm where there's the most amount of movement. So now that we see the 30 images, the system actually chooses the image at max exhale. So if you see that one at the bottom that's white, the system chooses that one by default. But now I can go and choose a reference image in the middle of the cycle. So if I have one right in the middle and select that and accept, that will take an average of that patient breathing. And then when I start monitoring, I'll see the deltas, hopefully equally on both sides of your zero there and your deltas. You can see like the verts equal on both sides. It's not just on one side of the line. Yeah.
Great.
We do.
Say
So
that
will
again.
be the visual feedback?
Yes, we are going to be demonstrating that with our DIBH.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Yep, that'll be coming up.
All right.
Okay, let's move
Great.
on.
Bolus. Okay, so we're going to start off with the chest wall. And we're going to go through the same steps, lining up our patient. So again, we're going to go right to the treatment isocenter. And then we're going to start running our deltas. So we're going to see where we're at initially in the 6-degree of freedom values. Okay, so now on this one, I want to do it a little bit different. I want to add in a treatment capture. So treatment captures are a great tool to make sure your patient arm and chin positions are in the same spot as they were during their CT. So to do that, you pause the monitoring and you go to capture, and you're going to see the green treatment capture. All right, so you can see we have the green image. So that's where the patient is right now, and it's overlaid on top of the reference of where he should be. So if you take a look at the elbow, like they're not overlapping. The elbow is actually too far down. So I would know to manipulate this patient arm and bring the arm up, recapture a treatment image, and we're going to keep doing that process until both images align.
So I'm going to look at that image and just try and move his elbow a little bit more in and see if we can make that any better. We also have the remote control, so I'm not tied to the workstation if I wanted to use that. I could take a treatment capture here and then move the arm as necessary and take as many treatment captures as I would like. Okay? So his arm looks pretty close there. Maybe I can come back in just a little bit more. Okay. Then we could take another treatment capture and so on. Okay.
Yep, so I'll see a lot of sites that will do this for like the 3-field breast patients. They'll double check the arm and chin position, and also for lung patients. Okay, so now that we're going to be in perfect alignment here, it's time for us to add our bolus. So a little bit different in record mode, we need to add a new field just called a bolus field. And that's just going to be a placeholder for every reference that we take when the bolus is on the patient.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and switch over to the bolus here. I have a chainmail bolus that we're going to be using today just because it's a little bit easier to place on him. This one actually comes white, which is really nice for the surface-guided systems. They also have white backing superflab and then actual white superflab, I believe, too. We have a couple samples of that up here. So we're just going to place this on his skin. Lays really nice and flat. It's nice.
Yep. All right, so once the bolus is placed, we're going to go to capture, and we're going to capture a new reference. And if you notice right now on the right side, there's no image there. So this is day 1. There's not going to be any bolus image from SIM, so it's blank. So at this point, on day 1 only, we do need to add an ROI. Perfect. Okay, so I will say, if at this process you forget to add your reference here, that's when I would look at my frame rate, and I would notice my frame rate being 1 or below, and the system will be very slow to update. So that's my cue to know that I forgot to draw the ROI. And now the system is trying to align the entire patient there and not just focus on the treatment site.
Okay, great.
Okay, perfect.
Any questions on bolus?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so the centroid would be for your ROIs. So you can either have an ROI isocenter, so that will be your ROI that's drawn around isocenter where you're treating, and you can either do the treatment captures to set your arm up and extremities for positioning, or you can do the centroids. So those are additional ROIs that you can draw. Right, so you could draw an ROI centroid of the arm and get that into the patient in the right position. You could do a chin. But the bolus field's in record mode.
That's a good question. We'll have some time afterwards, excuse me, to go over that as well. So any questions you guys have afterwards, we can go over how to set up those fields for sure. It's a good question.
Yeah,
So it's the
look.
same product. It's likely that it's a different version. Yeah, so the different versions do have different layouts, so that could be a possibility. Yep, but yep, same product.
I don't own the product, so it's a very basic question.
Okay, no worries.
Does the light reflected in the mirror camera captures the visual depends on the color of the skin or any changes in
Go ahead.
Yeah, it does. So up in the corner, we have the skin tones. So you can either choose a fair skin tone, mid, or dark. So you do want the correct skin tone per your patient. So it will optimize your cameras.
How about during the middle of treatment and bottom
Yeah.
the socket is not and then we're
Yeah. So if you're at the mid, let's say, and now you want to change it to dark, you can do that anytime. Yeah.
What are some of your workarounds when it's too low? Or some point it gets difficult on some, say, hour, and that gets very hard.
Yes, and if you,
People try to put a tissue, flat, whatever you can do to get those cameras to read it. Are there any other solutions for that?
yeah, so the first thing I would go with is to call service and to have them come and they can adjust the apertures for the dark skin tone and they can open those up.
Also check your,
For what? Sorry.
Even more dark?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I would, yep. Will it only affect the dark skin tone? So you change it per skin tone.
yeah. Another thing that can affect that is your lighting levels. So make sure when you're doing your calibration that your lighting is the same for your calibration and your actual treatment. Okay, great. Should we move on to DIBH?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to DIBH really quick. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another question? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
With breast patients, is it easier to line them up when they're straight, or if they have a table, they can go ahead and do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So anytime you're lining up your patients, you want to set everything up at 0. And then once you have your couch rotations, you'll kick your couch, and then you'll click the couch rotation in the Surface software. Yeah, it's a good question. Okay. Okay, so to start off DIBH, the first thing I want to talk about here is this real-time coach device that we have. Okay? This real-time coach is only used for deep inspiration breath hold technique. Okay, so what ends up happening is the 2D plotter you see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, I'm going to grab my laser pointer here, is going to be replicated onto this device for the patient to see during treatment. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about this plotter. You have this white bar, which represents the patient's vertical threshold. Okay, you have the colored bar, which will go between yellow and green, that will move up and down based on the patient's breathing. Okay, so the goal is to have the patient take a breath in and that colored bar to reach in the middle of the vertical threshold and to hold it and sustain it for the duration of the treatment. Okay, so regardless of which 2D plotter you have up here, it will always display as the coaching plotter on your device. So this device is connected via Bluetooth. So you can see there's a small icon here. It's solid Bluetooth symbol saying we are connected to the system. And then you have a flashing play button telling us it's waiting for us to begin monitoring. So this device just connects to a gooseneck that's connected to the table via clamp. And there's a few different sizes of that. And then you just attach it just by screwing on the coach as so. And once that is attached, you can label it or bring it over to the patient for them to look at. Okay, and then that patient knows exactly how much breath they need to take in to assume the same position that they achieved in the simulation. All right, so let's just begin, now that we know the basics of DIBH, with what it's going to look like in treatment mode. In our simulation with deep inspiration breath hold, we have 2 CT scans. We'll do a breath hold scan and then we'll do a free breathing scan. Both of those generate a structure set for us to use. Okay, so this is extremely beneficial for us as therapists to set up our patient with, because we can start with our free breathing structure set, get them in the general position, switch over to the breath hold, and it's not as hard to get them in the position, okay, because they're generally where they need to be. So going back to our 5 steps to treat, right, our acronym, T stands for Treatment Isocenter. Perfect. So we're going to line up our patient to their treatment isocenter. And in this case, for deep inspiration breath hold, we're on the free breathing to start out with, okay? So we've lined up to our treatment isocenter, and we're going to next, the letter R is run monitoring. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and begin monitoring here, okay? And our goal here is to fine-tune the deltas, right? We want to get everything as close to 0 as possible. So we're going to start with our rotation, roll, and pitch, physically moving the patient, and then moving our translational shifts just with the couch. This couch is a little limited and doesn't move like that. So we're not going to adjust those today. All right, once everything is as close to 0 as possible, then we can pause monitoring and switch over to our breath hold surface that we achieved from sim. Okay, now once I do that, before we begin monitoring, I would expect at least one of my deltas to be out of tolerance once I begin monitoring. Which one? Vertical, right? Possibly lat, possibly longe, depending on how that patient is breathing in. Okay, so I'm starting monitoring, and it looks like he took about a 2 centimeter breath in during sim, which is pretty good. Okay, so from here on out, we can coach our patient to try and assume that same position he did in sim, or he can use the patient feedback device. Again, that's an optional feature, okay, or an optional purchase, but it is greatly beneficial for those patients. So if I instructed my patient, go ahead and take a breath in and hold it. He's going to try and get that colored bar in the middle of the white bar. Once everything is completely in tolerance, that bar will go green. You can see that he's actually achieved that position, and it was yellow. That's because one or more of the deltas was out of tolerance, okay? So those are the 2 colors you're going to see. Once everything is in green and he's as close to 0 as possible on his vert, we can actually, if we need to, adjust the lat and the longe just with our translational couch movement, right? We don't ever want to move the vert because that's just going to be based on the patient amplitude. Okay, so the patient can go ahead and breathe. Sorry, Tim. He's a good breather. Okay. And once we know that this is reproducible for the patient, we can step outside and continue along with our 5 steps. The next step would be E, the letter E, and that is everyday imaging. Okay, so if we have any imaging, we'll step outside, we'll have him assume the breath hold position, and then take our ports, right? Okay, so after we verified with our ports that everything is okay, we are going to move on to letter A, which is, you want to remember? Always monitoring, good job. Okay, so we're always continually monitoring our patient during treatment for intrafraction motion management. Okay, perfect. So we'll have our patient go ahead and take another breath in and hold it. And we're going to do this as many times as necessary until he has completed his treatment, okay? All right, good job. Okay, go ahead and breathe. So in that case, before we image, we would probably adjust his shifts, right, or his deltas. But again, I can't with this couch. So now, once we've delivered the full prescribed dose for the deep inspiration breath hold technique, then the last letter of our 5 steps is T, which is terminate. Okay, perfect. So we're going to terminate, pause, and exit our patient, right? And now we're complete with the deep inspiration breath hold treatment. Any questions on that process? Yeah?
What does it look like on the monitor for the patient?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's pull that up so you can see it. So we'll go ahead and begin monitoring. That 2D plotter at the bottom here is actually replicated on here for the patient to see. So go ahead and take a breath in. I don't know if you can see that colored bar come up. Okay? So that's how the patient is going to know exactly how much breath they need to take in. They're trying to reach that vertical mark, which is set by their ISO center they achieved in SIM. Okay? And he's actually doing a pretty good job without even looking at it. So from here, if I needed to coach him, I could say let a little bit out, or take some more breath in. Whatever I needed to do, if he needed some additional help, I could coach him over the intercom. Okay, go ahead and breathe. Okay. Once we pause monitoring, this 2D plotter is no longer displayed. It goes back to our Bluetooth and flashing play symbol waiting for us to go. So the patient won't continue to breathe once you pause monitoring. Yeah, so it's just a clamp that attaches to the table. You can come up and look at it afterward, and then it attaches up here for the RTC. Yeah, that's a good question. So deep inspiration breath hold, we live in a day and time where patients love to be involved in their treatments, right? And this gives them the opportunity to do that, and they really do like it. We've had some good patient feedback. With that comes patient education. So you really do, the first day, you need to explain what the device is, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, and what you want them to do. I was at a site a few weeks ago, and they coached the patient, just take a breath in. Once that colored bar is on top of the white bar, we're good to go. We stepped outside of the room, and the patient took a breath in and literally put the bar on top of the white threshold bar. I didn't think anything was wrong with that, nor does anyone else, but the patient understood that a little bit differently. So once the patient understands how to use that device, you're gonna be good to go. And just that coaching too. The way you explain that is different for everyone.
Makes the patient more nervous by focusing on them.
I haven't seen that, but that's going to be, I think, based on each patient. I think each patient's going to be different, and their needs are going to be met in a different way. Yeah. So as the therapist, I think we kind of know how to explain certain situations to certain patients. So it's a good question. Yeah, so the superfat bolus, there's actually some boluses with white backings. Those are helpful. If you don't have anything like that, we've seen places put tape, just tape it with like a white paper tape so that it shows up that way, or Glad press and seal, I've heard some places will use, just because it doesn't have that reflective surface, or even just putting a paper towel on top of it. But I think the easiest solution is just we actually have some samples up here if you want to come up and look. Just of some white, they're actually white superflab too. I haven't seen it on the system, but it might pick up pretty well, so. Okay. Good. Any other questions on that? Yeah. For the sim? Yeah, so there's a lot of good tips that can come from the simulation, right, that we want. One of the biggest things I could suggest is have them take a breath through their nose. Take a deep in breath through their nose. Their lungs are going to inflate more than their abdomen will. If you breathe in through your mouth, your abdomen tends to inflate a little bit more, and they don't arch as much. When you breathe in through your mouth, you tend to kind of arch your back, but through your nose, your back doesn't arch as much. And that's one of the things I think we run into a lot with deep inspiration breath hold are the pitch issues. And so that's something that could really help with that. The other thing is to tell them to take 80% of their total lung volume, however you want to explain that. Sometimes you say deep inspiration and it's a, and I can't take any more in or let any more out. And then it's really difficult to assume that same position in the treatment room, right? So if you can tell them 80%, they have a little leeway in the room to say, okay, take more in, let some out, and that helps a lot. But yeah, if you want more tips, come talk to us. We see a lot. So, okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to do something fun here. We're going to do a little session called Beat the Trainer. Okay, it's going to be a little exciting here. So again, we can't move our table like we normally would in the clinic, but what we want to set up, you can go ahead and set up, Tim, and switch around. We're going to work on setting up an extremity, okay? And this session is going to be based solely on our rotationals, okay? An extremity, has anyone ever set up an extremity with the surface guided system before? Okay, you can just relax your knee down all the way. Okay, well, this will be a good experience for everyone. I guess I'll take this off so I don't break it here. Put this down out of the way. Okay. All right, so here's the rules. Ready? Go. Okay, so we're going to set up this extremity. Again, just using rotation, roll, and pitch. I'm going to do it first, and then see how long it takes me, and then we're going to ask a couple volunteers to come up and see if you can beat me. There's a couple Starbucks gift cards involved in this, so it's really fun. Okay, so we just need a couple volunteers, so just be thinking about it. We're here to help you too, but it is very simple of how we set this up. So what I'm going to do is, Tim, go ahead and just lift up your leg. I'm just going to kind of get this around where it shouldn't be. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin monitoring. So if we begin monitoring, man, I did not do a very good job messing you up. Go ahead and bend your knee just a bit. Okay. So let's say that's something we were looking at to set up our extremity, okay? First thing I want to do is set up my rotation, roll, and pitch first. I have a very large pitch value. There's a few things we can do to see how to fix this, okay? We can take a treatment capture like we learned earlier, take a look at the little arrows and see exactly where we need to go. We can show you that after if you want, or I can just troubleshoot and just guess and check, right, as we go along. So he obviously has a pitch. I can tell right now by looking at him that he's not in the vac lock the way that he's supposed to be. So that's a good indicator using the system that he really isn't in the immobilization device the way he should be. So that's a good start. So I'll probably start with the pitch. Then I'm going to move the rotation or the yaw, which is just left to right. Okay, we have the pitch and then the roll. In the roll, I'm just going to take his foot and physically move it left to right. Okay, so the ROI is located in what region? Can you guys tell? His knee, yep. So it's the knee that we want to move. So we want to ensure that that is setting up correctly. And I have Rachel over here with the timer. You came up and everything. I'm kind of nervous. I think you're more excited about this than I am. Okay. All right, so go ahead and start it. So I'm just going to put him down into his back lock, try and get rid of that pitch, which that actually worked really well. And I'm going to move the yaw just by moving the back lock left to right. I'm going to get everything less than 0.5 if I can. Let's see, so I went the wrong way with the roll, so I'm going to rotate him out a little bit that way. Okay. Oh, come on. This is taking me too long here now. I got a little overzealous. Okay. Time?
32.49.
32, man, I'm getting slower. Okay, my record was 20 seconds. But, okay, so that's what we want to do. So try and get everything less than 1. I tried to get it less than 0.5. I could probably tweak this a little bit more and spend a little bit more time getting that going. But everything less than 1, I want to see if you guys can beat me. So we have, how many seconds again? 32.4, okay. All right, so a couple Starbucks gift cards involved. Who wants to come up and give it a shot? We'll help you out. It's really fun, guys. We need some cheerleaders, too, if anyone wants to be a cheerleader. Okay, come on up. Okay. Okay, go ahead and bend your knee. Lift up. Okay. All right. Okay, so you can start with whatever you want. We'll go ahead and press monitoring so we can see what's going on. I didn't really mess them up that much, so, okay. Okay, so go ahead and start the timer now.
Okay.
All right, if we want some cheerleaders, some motivation here, get that going. I know. It was very enthusiastic. That was good. Okay, so it looks like we got the rotation in. Okay, that's just the yaw, which is left to right. So that's good. The roll, we're getting there. Excellent. And then the pitch is probably just going to be how far he is in the back lock, right? Whether his knee is bent too much or not enough. And you can physically move his leg if you need to, too. You're okay with it, right, Tim? We can move you up. Just no crazy stretching. Okay, great. Okay, good. Everything's within tolerance.
Stop.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead and round of applause. How long was it? 57. Okay. About 50 seconds, so that's pretty good. I mean, that's the hardest thing to set up with a rotational, right? I'll trade you. Just start with you.
They're so heavy.
No problem.
Thanks.
Last time somebody left without the gift card, so I have an extra one. Okay, good job. All right, anyone else want to give it a shot? Come on up. Go ahead and take another reference. Go ahead and bend your knee. Relax. Okay. We're just going to give you a fresh start. Is that okay? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and start monitoring and then start the timer now. Oh, man, I didn't even move him out. See, sometimes I make it easier than I should, right? Whoa, she's getting there quick. I know. So if you notice, she actually rotated the knee. Why? Because that's where the ROI is, right? All of our deltas are derived from the region of interest, so that was a very smart move. Her pitch is really good. Rotation and roll are getting there. We can maybe roll just a little bit, but he's all within tolerance. Let's see if we can get it less than 0.1 with that roll maybe. We were there. I think he moved on us. Go ahead and grab his foot and rotate it to the left. Yeah, there you go. Awesome. It's very, very sensitive. It's a degree of movement, but it really isn't much. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and give her a round of applause. Okay, gift card for you. Thank you for coming up. Appreciate it. Okay, good deal. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up the session. We appreciate you guys coming up and playing with that. It's really fun. Obviously, once you get those rotations into where you need to be, you're just going to move your vert Latin lunge with your couch. So that's the easiest part, right? So they did the hard part. So let's give them another round of applause. And we're going to go ahead and finish up the session. We're glad you guys are here. Hope you have a good rest of your time here, learn lots of things. We have a couple stations back here if you want to practice regions of interest on with your new flip books. And then you can come on up here and play around with the back lock if you want. So, okay, thanks guys.